So as Josh and I have said before, sometimes our ideas come from in between recording episodes, and we pivoted. We're having a wonderful episode about kind of TV culture and how they actually release new content these days.
Right. And I think we're going to be talking about like how Netflix model of binging a whole season versus the old like scheduling model, which is coming back, and some of the new kind of services being offered. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We're just going to riff on it, I think, and find out where it goes, huh, Brian?
Launch out with us onto the loop today as we discuss the binging and scheduling of shows today on Curiosity Continuum.
Hey everybody, this is Josh.
And this is Brian.
Welcome to Curiosity Continuum. We are a podcast and movement started by two lifelong friends whose mission is to guide you through a changing world by helping you level up your contextual awareness, sharpen your collaboration and problem-solving skills. Our conversations explore, examine, and reframe practical topics that help you learn something new and apply what you already know in a new way.
If you find these conversations helpful, please hit subscribe on your favorite podcast app and rate us. Leave a review so others can find the community and join us. You can always find us on curiositycontinuum.com and on our social media accounts. Thanks for tuning in, and let's start the conversation.
All right, Brian. So we had this idea of talking about, binging episodes, like the new Netflix kind of model versus scheduling, which is kind of like Disney Plus, and all the other ones are kind of like starting to schedule episodes like how they were when we were kids. So it's kind of this circular pattern that seems to be coming back around, and
it's like a loop.
Yeah, it's almost like a loop, right? We wanted to talk about it a little bit because how the society's changes and how like the business changes, I think, are going to bring it back around to really how like we experience television, right?
Let us rewind not too terribly long ago, and it still exists today, into the land of network television.
Way back to the land. Yeah.
It still happens, obviously, but especially before like even cable TV and on-demand stuff was even an option, content for television shows was scheduled, certain time slots, and there's still a whole science around like this type of show fits really well at this time for this demographic. These are the type of ads we'll show.
A season, but what it was like, yeah,
and there was very specific publishing routes to get that content out to the masses, right? And so network television was kind of a great way to just put it out there to everybody. Because there was the expectation that these ads would run along with this content to be in front of the eyeballs that it needed to promote products and services and things, they scheduled out this content in order to get the run on the season, for example, right? So you might have 13 episodes in a season that is like your fall lineup or your spring lineup. And then like over summer and the winter, they would have reruns. I know kind of sounds funny now, like they have reruns because they would rerun the content so they'd still get more mileage out of it, and it would allow them time to make the new content.
Right. And this is a real thing, like, especially with shows, like you would watch a show, it would come to a quote unquote cliffhanger. And it would be like, what's going to happen? Oh, find out in the fall. And everyone's like, no. Like June. We're kids, so we're thinking like 3 months is, the eternity. And I guess we have to go outside now, right, Mom? It was that kind of.
Yeah.
But it was the way it worked. And it was the way production schedules ran. It was the way everything, especially the United States, really ran on that, right, Brian?
Yes. And what happened is like if you didn't have a VCR or some other way to record it, you would like time the rerun schedule so you could catch the episode.
Catch the ones you missed. Yeah.
Yeah. So now let's move forward a little bit. Now, cable TV obviously is coming in the mix, and so that's a little bit different, but they still have scheduled programming in that. And now we enter the age, and we'll call it the age of Netflix just because
that's who really started it.
Yeah. It's a very understood cultural
Whether you
term
like
as
the
well.
Netflix model or not, this is what happened. So.
Yep. And so they loaded a bunch of old content, which is glorious because I haven't seen that in umpteen years, and people watched it. For the new content, Netflix has gone through a few different content cycles where they've had their own, like they've rented, basically licensed other people's product to put on their shelves, and then they realized we need to have more content on the shelves, so they'd buy people's content, and then they started to make their own content. Here we are today. But they would release everything all at once, and that's where the term binge watching came from, is because you could literally binge every piece of content in that series at one time,
Right.
you know? And so, like, Stranger Things is Netflix's hottest property. I mean, like, I'm just putting it out there. It's awesome.
For now, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, for now. Until, the next Stranger Things appears. When those things are released and it's all at once, there's a lot of buildup, obviously, around it to go like, oh my gosh, like, this is so exciting. However, it really can become like an 8-hour movie. And then you kind of spend the whole day
That's what it does. That's what
it
it does become. If you look at the way like the new production runs, they run up to these. It makes it so you almost have to watch the next episode. It really gets hard to say stop. Mel and I, my wife and I, we fall into that all the time. We're like, let's just going to watch one episode tonight or 2 episodes. But then you're like, oh, you son of a, you got me into this. Now I've got to watch this. But they want that. And that's the way the content was driven. Back in the 90s, especially when this was really prevalent, they would have one-off episodes and episodes that were all self-contained. There was also a larger story at play, but they only played those episodes every so often. And so you would have to, they would always play them at the beginning and the end of the season, but in the middle of the season, it might have only really been 13 episodes that mattered, but there was like 22 episodes. And there was like 5 or 6, 7, 8 episodes that were just kind of like their own self-contained story. Now today, that really doesn't happen as much, right, Brian?
You've kind of kicked out the constraints of the how long something has to
Right.
be. Right. It doesn't have to exactly match like a 30-minute spot, and you have this many ad spots. You have a little bit of flexibility with it, which is sometimes very good because it's
a constraint.
It allows,
and we've talked about that before, where constraints are good for creativities, for creatives especially.
Yes. And in that format also, when Netflix now says, hey, you can watch the entire season all at once, you enjoyed it while you did, but you didn't really get as much cultural conversation currency, if that makes sense. It's like you talked about it like, oh my gosh, this is a big event. It was amazing.
And I think let's give an example of that. So I think the one everyone's going to remember, like that was old enough. Even we weren't even really that old then, but it was Dallas when JR was shot.
Yes.
That was like the cultural event. And my parents, I was not allowed to watch Dallas. I had to go to bed because it was too adult for me to watch. But a character was shot and no one knew who shot him, no one knew if he was going to survive or not. So that was the cliffhanger to get you. But that was a cultural moment. Everywhere you went, everyone was talking. Well, who shot JR? Is he going to live? Is he going to die? Blah, blah, blah. Right, Brian?
Yes. So what it stretched the, well, you know what it does? It allows it to be embedded into everybody's like cultural.
Like you have to talk about it
of
because first of all, I mean, we're talking about like small talk. People love small talk, but what else are you going to talk about? If you're not talking about the hottest show on television and this huge cliffhanger that they had.
It's easy cultural currency. If you don't know about sports, you don't know about the weather, you can talk about TV shows and generally find something where people will fall in with it, So I saw this comment and I've seen my friends in the film industry talk about it, where there was somebody posted on Twitter after Stranger Things season 2 and they said, "Love Dallas season 2. I want season 3 right now." And somebody commented back like, that's not how content production works.
Right.
It's like, it just doesn't automatically appear. There's a lot of time and effort and money and whole lots of things to go into making something like that. I think what people realized in content creation and in media and in whatever is that they burned through their content too quickly. They could not feed the monster of binge. And people, I think, devalued some of the enormity of the content because they could just get it whenever.
Right. And I mean, I have friends to this day who like refuse to watch a TV series until it's over. So like I have like 2 friends who like, for example, won't watch The Mandalorian because they're like, oh, it's only had 2 seasons so far. I'm like, yeah, well, you can watch all of the seasons. Oh, no, I'm going to wait till it's all done. And then I'm going to binge it like in 3 days. So I'm going to watch the whole thing. That's basically what they're trying to do. So they're trying to recreate that model.
Yeah. But it's kind of funny because like then that you actually make the life of that content even longer.
Right.
Right? Because then you're watching it again. So now we're seeing some things like in other streaming services, like Josh said, it's like almost like a return to a network television kind of model where you're allowing people to wait. Now, with streaming services, it's not like it drops like 7 p.m. or 7 Central or whatever it was. You just like, it might drop at the beginning of the day on a Monday or a Friday
Afternoon
or whatever it is.
Whatever, yeah.
Yeah. But what's fun is that people, I think the way the world works too, I think we have more asynchronous type of work schedules and situations even now more than ever. And it allows people, what's fun about it is it allows people to enjoy it on their own time, but they know it's available as soon as this time.
And what's great about it is it allows that conversation to happen again, because no one is going to spoil what happens next for you because they don't know either. So even within that whole period of a week, so you have about 7 days or so, you can talk to people about it. And you can have the conversation. You can have that Dallas-like conversation. Like The Mandalorian was probably the best one. That was the latest one that everyone's talking about it. You know, especially season 1. I think it was a huge surprise to people that, first of all, a show could be this good. Second of all, is that it brought in like non-fans into the show. Like people that you would never expect. They're like, oh yeah, I watch that show. I love it. And I'm like, really? You know? But they understood it. They get it. And I'm like, that's great. And I think that's awesome. But it brings in that talk about it. And it brings in that time to reflect, which is important.
Think about it this way. We have a vehicle that's kind of coming back around where you have basically a common way to start having a conversation.
Yeah.
It sounds like a good podcast we could do about those kind of things. But seriously, like part of the art of finding common ground is like you go to some of those institutions of television and whatever, and you can start there. You know, why do so many people talk about sports? It's because it's like there's many different people.
It's literally the
sports.
zeitgeist of the moment.
Yes,
and that is important in society. In societies, zeitgeist, that thing that's happening for everyone at the same time is important.
You know what? I just realized something too. Let's riff on sports for just a minute. People have their favorite teams. People have their not favorite teams, right, to put it, and people have very strong emotional ties to these subjects.
And the one thing
right?
is they all have the love for their sport.
Yes. Now, what's interesting is when it comes to things like television shows and movies and sports,
right,
is that you could actually engage on a common topic and vehemently disagree with somebody and still have a great time and leave as friends. Now, it's like if you could capture that and pull it into real life the way it happens right now, because people are just like, I think, almost terrified to take on topics.
I think what it is it's that topic is, we're starting to get in almost into like the political topics of the day. To people, those are different, but they're actually the same,
And the skill set is the same to be able to present it, to listen to one another and do that and still go away as like, we can respect one another.
Right. And it's okay to have a different opinion. That's like this whole thing, like binging versus scheduling. I know there's going to be people that are going to say to me, I listened to that episode, Josh, I really disagree with you that I love the binging part of it. And I go, look, I like that too. But I think that as a society, they're going, and the business model is going back to the scheduling, and here's why. But we can disagree on that and be just totally okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing, is that even if you
Yes.
don't, like, you come to this podcast and you listen to this episode and you're like, these guys are full of it. It's not changing back. Stuff is always changing, for one. Right, Brian?
Always.
Yeah. And it's okay to like disagree with somebody, as long as at the end of the day, you're like, that's their opinion and that's fine. That's valuable. But here's mine,
Mm-hmm.
And it's good to talk about these things.
I'm in 100% agreement with you there, Josh. So
this took a turn, which I didn't expect it to take.
But it's good,
Yeah.
Because like look, people, if you've listened to this podcast,
we are a circular podcast.
We're a circular podcast, but we also know the entry points to get to a bigger topic.
Yeah.
Right? It's a constant iteration on something to go like, you know what, that applies. You'll listen to an episode, if you haven't already, about portable skills, right? These type of things are entryways to open up the greater world to you within yourself and within others. Understanding those, I'll say it like the thin spots, to be able to kind of like jump into something else and apply it. That's where you're really going to have a lot of growth, and you're going to be able to help others grow by exercising that again and again.
Right. And I think that maybe this is a good place to put a comma here today, just to give people an idea of, to think about this topic and to think about kind of where this went. Because I think this got into a much more meatier topic that we might discuss in another episode.
And until that next episode, this is Brian.
And this is Josh.
For Curiosity Continuum.